Hello and welcome to Global Business. This is the first episode of the program in 2023, and trust me, I am excited that we are back. I am Imeweru Yomohai, your anchor. We have a lot on the program today, from the National Housing and Population Census that was recently postponed to May, to the new laws signed by President Muhammadu Buhari, and lots more. Then street business is back. Yes, and on Street Business today, our street business correspondent will be talking with a business owner or business owners about the statement by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, where she said she's urging the next administration to increase the value-added tax, that's VAT, from 7.5% to 10%. She says this will boost the economy. What do business owners think about this? Rachel Abioye is our business correspondent, and she'll be telling us more about that with business owners. That's a street business. Also, our business celeb for the week is a woman that has fought through struggles of life and is excelling as an entrepreneur. Her story will definitely inspire you. On Talking Point, our guest is, you know him, Eze Onyekpere. He'll be analyzing the different issues on our table. Eze Onyekpere, you know, is the Executive Director of the Center for Social Justice. But first, let's bring you business trends.
The Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority's audited financial results indicates that most of its income sources decreased last year. The drops led to significantly lower revenue and a one-third decrease in net profit. NSIA, the Nigerian Government Investment Agency, manages funds over budgeted hydrocarbon revenues, investing them in the government's account in a variety of medium and long-term assets. Total revenue for 2022 fell by 28.1% to 154.9 billion naira due to a drop in net gain on financial assets and net foreign exchange gain. LBS director calls for increased salaries before fuel subsidy removal. Franklin Ngu, the director of the Public Sector Initiative at the Lagos Business School, is urging the government at all levels, including private sectors, to raise workers' wages to mitigate the effect of the impending removal of fuel subsidy in May. He urges the government to redirect the money saved by eliminating subsidies to crucial areas of the economy, such as education, infrastructure, transportation, and healthcare, amongst others. To bolster his case for raising workers' wages before the elimination of the fuel subsidy, he stated that, according to a 2019 study conducted by his organization, the 30,000 naira minimum wage has significantly lost its real value, so much so that the same amount of money is now valued at 20,000 naira in 2022. Inflation is blamed as the primary source for this. He went on to say that, given the difficulties that most families face, companies, particularly the government, owe it to their employees to raise their pay. However, he urged that eliminating the fuel subsidy would not be the ultimate answer to mitigate the impact. South Africa gets $94 billion in taxes in the 2022-2023 fiscal year. The South African Revenue Service reports that the country collected 1.686 trillion rands, which rounds up to $94 billion in tax revenue for the fiscal year that concluded on March 31st, just short of the government's 1.692 trillion rand estimate in the 2023 budget. According to reports, while mining volumes decreased in the previous year, higher commodity prices added considerably to increased tax receipts. Personal income tax 35.7%, value-added tax 25%, and company income tax 20.6% were the primary source of the revenue collection. At 33.9%, the financial industry was by far the largest contributor to the tax revenues. The country's revenue service further said ongoing power outages have had a debilitating impact on the economy and revenue collection, with the outage contributing to a minimum tax revenue loss of 60 billion rands per year. Indonesia lowers VAT on electric vehicles to 1%. In a bid to encourage the adoption of electric vehicles and draw investment into domestic production, Indonesia has reduced the value-added tax on battery-based electric vehicle sales from 11% to 1%. Some electric buses also received a VAT reduction. According to the Coordinating Ministry of Maritime and Investment Affairs, the incentive went into force this month and will last until the end of the year. Indonesia announced a 7 trillion rupiah, which rounds up to $466.70 million, state subsidy for electric motorcycle purchases through 2024. The country is stepping up efforts to attract investment into domestic electric vehicle battery manufacturing. Officials have been trying to attract investment from the electric vehicle manufacturers such as Tesla and China's BYD Auto. In other news, OPEC announces surprise cuts in oil output. Saudi Arabia and other organizations of the petroleum exporting countries' oil producers announced additional oil production cuts of around 1.16 trillion barrels per day, in a surprise move that experts predicted would cause an immediate rise in prices and that the US deemed unwise. The development comes just a day before a virtual meeting of an OPEC ministerial panel, which includes Saudi Arabia and Russia, and was anticipated to maintain the existing 2 million DPD cuts until the end of 2023. Oil prices dropped to $70 per barrel last month, the lowest in 15 months, on fears that a global banking crisis will reduce the demand. And that's it on Business Trends for today. I am Victor Anigo Namso.
Well, you know what's trending now on business. Let's go on a short break. Please stay with us.
The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, urges the next administration to raise the value-added tax from 7.5% to 10%. She claims that Nigeria has the world's lowest VAT rate. She said if the VAT is raised, the nation's GDP will rise. However, a lot of business owners didn't find this amusing.
Increasing VAT in what rate?
From 7.5% to 10%.
To increase the VAT is not the problem we have here as a nation, as a masses. The problem we have here that the economy is not okay by the masses. If you have production of something like this week, 2,000, you produce a book 2,000 naira. By next month, the paper will increase, the cost of producing will increase to almost 3,500. The only problem we have in Nigeria to them to make sure that our economy is stable and is okay, not to increasing the VAT.
The way things are going these days, you can see that every day things are going high. So even the tax we are paying should go high also, so that we will be able to meet up our needs. Because the tax they are paying to this country is also going to the country pocket, not Ghana pocket, not Brazil pocket. It's still Nigeria pocket that is coming to. And after paying the VAT, after increasing it, and as we are paying, and how to make use of it is what that matters most.
We have some debt to pay, so the VAT might help to reduce the debts.
Business owners say that this is unfavorable because they still have to pay all the taxes and may have nothing to fall back on at the end of the day. Well, that decision belongs to the incoming government. I am Rachel Abioye.
I usually tell people that entrepreneurship found me. I didn't find entrepreneurship. And how did entrepreneurship find me? I was born with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a condition that affects children and affects their muscles and their balance. So as I grew, cerebral palsy affected my legs, my both legs, and I developed arthritis very early. So I was placed on drugs. But these drugs, because I was too young for the drugs I was taking, I suffered loads of negative side effects. And at some point, I just told myself I was done with drugs and I started doing research, looking for natural ways of managing the pain I was feeling. The doctors told me that I had osteoarthritis and I was having very serious pain. They were giving me painkillers, but it wasn't working. So I just knew that something had to be, a natural solution had to be there. And that was what I started doing. And later, this became a business when people realized that, okay, you are surviving without your pain. How are you doing this? And I said, I make this and it works for me. I was in my 20s, very early 20s, yeah, when I started the business. Okay, I actually started research very early because then I started research before it became a business. It officially became a business in 2019. It's been tough. I wouldn't say it's been easy because then being challenged, you kind of this challenge has to do with my mobility. So there are so many things that you would naturally spend more on, like maybe logistics, some things that you're supposed to go and do yourself. You find yourself spending money on logistics, and even if you want to go and do it yourself, the mode of transportation is quite different. Like someone who is not challenged would normally get on a bus. I can't do that. I have to use both. So then the fact is my own the expense is more expensive, and then you're dealing with people who don't know this. They just want to get their relief at an affordable rate. So it's kind of difficult balancing it. But at the end of the day, I think what has helped me scale through this has been the fact that people have fallen in love with what they have gotten. So at the end of the day, it was difficult initially because we're spending so much and there was no enough patronage to cover that. But when people realized that this is good, this is affordable, this can last, it's not drugs, they kept on coming back. So that has helped us scale through. Don't dwell on the challenge. You only see it as a problem when you dwell on it. Dwelling on it does a lot. It does majorly three things. When you dwell on the challenge, you see it as a problem. When you dwell on the challenge, you don't look for a way out. Now, I'm living with cerebral palsy, and cerebral palsy has no cure. But then there is something something that helps me accept it. And that's because I don't dwell on it. You know that you have this condition, you can get better. Instead of thinking of why, think of how can I make this better? I would not be this person if I wasn't challenged. I would not be looking for solutions to people who are having pain. So the challenge actually brings out the best in you if you don't look at it as a challenge.
Amazing. You can be anything you want to be. I hope Bashira's story thoroughly inspires you. Moving on now, we have Eze Onyekpere on the show today. Eze, like I told you earlier on, is the Executive Director of the Center for Social Justice.
Well, inflation has been on the rise for the past couple of months, and it's not particularly attributable, although it may have contributed to the naira scarcity and the fact that we had increase in price of fuel, petroleum products, as well as also the price of electricity. Electricity tariffs also went up, and you had a situation where production and service delivery, because of the naira crisis, also had to go down. And of course, but Nigerians still had to, normal things like food, people had to eat. But at the same time, even production in all sectors, including agriculture, was stagnated. So the economy was already headed on the wrong path before the naira crisis further escalated the challenges. So I think it is clear we are not producing enough, both for local production, local consumption, and for exports, whether it's food, whether it's in all other spheres of national endeavor. And of course, a currency that is fast depreciating compared to major international currencies because of the kind of economic policies that we've been running in the last 7.5 to 8 years. So that's the challenge. A lot of things are not in place, and the policy direction is not particularly clear, and it's not people friendly. It's not also market friendly. So we have a mismatch of policies that nobody can actually say what exactly we are pursuing in terms of the economic policy direction. Not clear to anybody, not clear to investors, or foreign or local, not clear to consumers, not clear to innovators, in fact, not clear to the general populace what exactly we are targeting. I think the census is almost costing $1 trillion. And if you look at the fact that Nigeria is heavily indebted and is using almost over 80% of all its resources to service existing debts, you can be very sure a good part of this money for the census was borrowed. And here we are in the last days of an administration that will go out on May 29. I think it had the whole of 8 years to conduct this census. And the fact that it could not conduct the census, a census is not something you begin to run in a haste in the last days of an administration. Particularly now, there is a lot of tension. A lot of all those fault lines and divides in Nigeria have been escalated by the election. I don't think it's a good time to organize an election. President Muhammadu Buhari should leave it for whoever is the incoming president to take up, because if we use the same process, incompetence that we saw in the INEC, the way INEC organized the last election, if that is the measure that we're going to put into the census, a whole lot of it will be messed up, because we have figures ruled out due to political reasons for state A or B to say, oh, we have this number of people. Of course, though ethnicity and religion is not being imputed into it, but people have been making a lot of claims, and the tensions in the land have gone up simply because of the way the elections was conducted. So I think it will not be advisable for Muhammadu Buhari to insist on conducting a census from borrowed funds, and at this timing, it will not produce the desired result. A lot of it will be doctored figures. And you can imagine when you are planning based on false statistics, that's the greatest challenge any administrator can face. The government is leaving in May 29, right? And you say you are doing the census in May. What did it do with the 8 years it had? And moreover, I've mentioned the issue of the divides. The fault lines of Nigeria have been accentuated by the very poorly and incompetently organized election and the deliberate mischief finally brought into the picture. So there's no question of organizing a census at this time. To achieve what? Let the incoming government take its time and plan for the census. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari cannot be talking about removing fuel subsidy because he made a budget for fuel subsidy for the first 6 months in the year. He's leaving on May 29, and the subsidy gets up to end of June. So whether he's designing any palliatives or not, he has so much food dragged on it, he has no such intention. So that will be one of the first assignments that will confront whoever is sworn in to replace him. So I don't want to be discussing fuel subsidy in the light of whatever Buhari or any of his ministers have said, because the political will to do so is not there. So it is left for the next administration to come, and a good number of us are in support of the removal of the proverbial fuel subsidy. There is no fuel subsidy. It's a scam that they're using to draw money from the treasury. Have you gone to the eastern part of Nigeria and the southern part of Nigeria, or most parts of the north? I was home in the east in December. We were buying fuel 350. It later got up to 450 in the morning of 1st of December before we started, 1st of January 2023, before we started coming back. So if people are buying fuel at 350 in the southeast, south, and other parts of Nigeria, with the exception of Lagos and Abuja, this is the only places where you go and get fuel at the pump price. And that's why there is perennial scarcity here. Because even at the peak of scarcity in Lagos and Abuja, many other parts of Nigeria have fuel, but you drive in, but you pay much more than what the government has stated to be the official price. So you can calculate the quantum of fuel consumed in Lagos and Abuja. Does that account to the 68 million liters that they take the subsidy on? So what you see possibly, if you take Abuja and Lagos, probably you may not be doing more than 10 million liters, okay? So what you need, if you are subsidizing actually, is less than, not up to 20% of the subsidy that an MPC and the people in those departments are claiming and pocketing the money. I'm clear, they are claiming and pocketing the money. There is no subsidy in the southeast. There's no subsidy in the south. There's no subsidy in the most parts of the northwest. There's no subsidy in most parts of the northeast. There's none in the north central. It's only between Abuja and Lagos. So it's a scam that is going on. People are stealing blindly, and nobody is calling them out. Everybody wants to be politically correct. But for me, it doesn't make sense anymore because people are stealing money under the guise of subsidy. So it's a scam. There's no subsidy. So the question of removing it is like to stop the criminals who have been stealing our money, to stop them from stealing, because the people are already paying the actual price for the petroleum products they are consuming, with the exception of Lagos and Abuja.
Yes, so that's it. That's the first edition of Global Business for 2023. And so we wrap it up on the program today. Until next week, same time. Global Business is brought to you by Cinema Productions Limited. I am Imewere Uhiyomokai. Thanks for always being there.